Okay, in the essence of time, I know we have a lot to go over today, so we'll go ahead and get going. Thank you for joining our webinar today. My name is Shane Hampshire. I'm with Art International, and I'll be your technical support host for today. Just want to make you aware of a few things. As participants join, you are muted on audio. I have disabled your unmuting options for today, just to ensure that we get the best quality audio from our presenters. You can choose speaker view by clicking on the speaker view button in the upper right-hand corner of your Zoom window. And also, for using the chat, there is a chat icon in the lower bottom of your Zoom panel. It says chat with a little thought bubble there. And if you need any technical assistance, I'm happy to provide that in the chat. And also, we'll be monitoring the chat for questions for our presenters today. In a little bit, you'll see a pop-up window come up on your screen as we do some polls in the next few slides. Once you are finished with that, you can close that. Everyone can close their own poll window after we see the results. So once again, I'll be here for the duration. If you need any technical support, please use that chat. And now I'm happy to hand things over to Philip Graham to kick us off.
Welcome, everyone. We want to thank you for choosing to spend an hour with us today. My name is Philip Graham, and I will be your host for today's webinar. We are taking the time to look at how social capital strategies improve program outcomes in human service programs, and including those that focus on people returning to their communities after incarceration. As Shane just mentioned, we provided a chat box, and one of the first things we want folks to do is to figure out who's actually on today's call. So if you would spend a few seconds entering your name and your organization and what part of the United States your particular agency is located. And so, and that will just let everyone know who's actually on the call and really see where your colleagues are spread across the US. Next slide. Today is the second webinar in a series of 4. And so I want to just briefly go over what we're going to attempt to achieve today during the webinar. As I said before, this work is informed by an initiative funded by ASPE, which is the Assistant Secretary for Planning and Evaluation. The work that you will hear in the presentations today are really informed by a couple of activities. And those include a comprehensive program scan, input from social capital experts, and also including federal staff, practitioners, and researchers, but also based on work from folks in the field. And so that is based on a series of case studies and also program site visits. Today specifically, we'll focus on 3 practices, and these 3 practices come from a group of 8 that we want to share with you over these next couple of webinars. And those include the following. We're going to first spend some time talking about creating space and opportunity for organic connections to happen, then also the importance of using peer groups, and then wrap that up by talking about how we emphasize accountability in these programs. Then we'll talk specifically about how we define those 3 practices, but here's a really cool part. We have a community partner who's doing this work in real time, who's really going to share with you the work that they've been doing in Nebraska. And specifically, you will hear a presentation from the Douglas County Community Mental Health Center and their IOP program. And so you'll hear a presentation from both participants as well as practitioners around what social capital practices look like in this specific program. Once we've heard that from them, we'll spend some time with some Q&A because we want to really get your input as well. And then after that, we will share with you some additional deeper dive into those practices, also showing examples from other community groups that are focused on social capital projects as it relates to the reentry program. One of the things I want to make sure I also remind you of is we really need and want your input in terms of how we can deliver this specific project and this work better. So you will see throughout an opportunity to link into a evaluation form so that we can get feedback on what is going well and what we might want to improve on. So you will see that towards the end of this presentation. We will show you the link to that evaluation form, and also we'll follow up later to get additional feedback. Next slide. as I mentioned before, this is the second webinar in a four-part series. Some of you who attended the webinar on August 4th, which was called Valuing Individuals with Similar Experiences and Data, have already seen that, but we encourage others to go to rti.org or ncimpact.org to actually hear that first webinar. Also, we have two additional webinars coming up, the first on September 1st and the fourth on September 15th. Again, we do hope you can attend those and ask that you register, and we'll put that registration link in the chat box for your to attend to it later. Also, I would be remiss today, Ms. Sarah Lawrence will be our chat box moderator. So Sarah is waving, and so she will be looking at your questions and really help me facilitate our dialogue today. So next slide, please. Because we really did a deeper dive into what social capital is in our last webinar, I just want to give a quick recap for those who may be joining for the first time. And so these are based on our work that we've done in collaboration with ASPE, but social capital is first the connections, networks, or relationships among people and the value that arises from them. More specifically though, social capital can be accessed or mobilized to help individuals succeed in life. And it also provides information that's both emotional or financial in support, as well as access to other resources. We understand that we're in interesting times now as we think about COVID-19 and our inability to engage in the relationships in the way that we would typically. So as we really think about the work we're doing today, it's really with that context in mind too, and understanding how we still can support social capital strategies, even in an era where we are have to focus on social distancing or our inability to connect in the ways that we have in the past. Next slide. While we will focus on positive social capital, we also realize that social capital can be negative, particularly if individuals are continuing to connect with those who may, for example, be involved in illegal activity. But this project is really focused on the importance of these positive relationships among those who both look like us, those who we're familiar with, and as well as those who we aren't. And so again, our presentation and the work we've been doing is really understanding what positive social capital looks like in practice, and really talking about how social service and human service agencies really incorporate those strategies into their work. Next slide. I mentioned earlier that we're going to spend time talking about three practices today. Those three, of course, are part of 8 that you will be exposed to over this webinar series. And so I want to spend a little time defining what those 3 are before I turn today's webinar over to our community partner. The first is about creating the space and opportunity for organic connections to happen. And really, organizations often use tools such as physical space, events, and program structure to really facilitate the development of personal connections. And whether that's in the form of a structured group or interactions or more casual mingling, or really these introductory opportunities, this type of engagement can really include everyone from peers to board members, volunteers, even meal delivery drivers. So again, how do we create these spaces that allow meaningful, lasting, organic relationships to evolve and develop? The second practice is called using peer groups. And here we talk about either peer groups or cohorts, and this approach that really can help program participants share experiences, build stronger networks, and develop more personal relationships. And so group members often tend to provide more encouragement to one another, feel more accountable to each other, and in some cases, really the sense of increased progress toward the goals based on that interaction with their peers. The last practice is really also closely related to the previous one in terms of peer groups. And this is really about emphasizing accountability. And this could be an explicit written verbal agreements between a program and its participants, but also the accountability that happens between individuals who are participating in a specific program. Accountability is mutual and requires both program buy-in as well as participant buy-in. And so you'll hear in our discussions today really talking about different ways in which accountability can be developed, both measured and assessed over time. And so we want to spend a few minutes now really getting some feedback from you. And I should have mentioned earlier, this webinar is really intended to be interactive, which means as much as you pour into it, you'll get out of it. And so we designed it to ask you questions because as much as we are sharing with you today, this project and this work will be enhanced by your feedback. So next slide, please. So here's our first chat question. So we're going to give you a poll. We want to know, do you use any of these practices? And so you will see Shane will actually put up the poll now. And if you could respond to whether or not you use that first practice, creating the space and opportunity for organic connections to happen, using peer groups, or emphasizing accountability. And you can respond to any and all of those. And so folks are starting to do that now. I'll give you a few seconds and then we will shut down the poll and then see where folks follow along this continuum. Okay, Shane, we want to end the poll. Great, quickly. And so if we look at about 51% of you, a little over half, said that you create organic spaces to really facilitate connections. And so we'll be asking some more about what that might look like and some of the challenges or highlights of that. Also using peer groups, almost 75% or 2/3 of you who responded say you use peer groups as a social capital strategy. And then we look at emphasizing accountability, where we had the highest, 57 or 79% of you said, yes, you emphasize accountability as a part of your social capital strategies. So great. So again, you are at least familiar with these concepts. And so what we wanted to do now is really have an opportunity to hear about a unique program that's really using some of these strategies as it relates to how you engage individuals in terms of proving outcomes using social capital strategies. Next slide, please. Okay. So I have the distinct pleasure of introducing colleagues from the Douglas County Community Mental Health Center, and specifically their Matrix Intensive Outpatient Program. The specific program we'll talk about today is actually called Coffee Chat. And so it's a program that's operated by the Community Mental Health Center in Douglas County, Nebraska, and it provides 10 weeks of and 90+ hours of structured substance use in mental health programming, then 6 months of continuing care case management. The specific social capital activity that we'll focus on today is their coffee chats. And these are where participants and graduates provide peer support, family therapy, and meaningful gestures of support from staff in a very, I think, innovative way. And so I'd like to introduce you to one of the lead practitioners there, Ms. Lydia Dombrowski, who will introduce her team and from there really talk about how those practices show up in the work that they're doing in Douglas County. So Lydia, I will turn it over to you and we will proceed with your presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Philip. Before I get started, I want to take a minute to introduce my team. Next slide. First, we have Emily Newby. She is a licensed mental health practitioner and my co-therapist in the IOP program at Douglas County. Next, we have Jared Dingwell and Ashley Chernus. They are program graduates and coffee chat participants, and they're going to share some of their insights with you today. Next slide. Okay, so first slide, Douglas County Community Mental Health Center Matrix IOP. Matrix IOP is an intensive outpatient treatment program operated out of our county jail's reentry assistance program. We are the product of collaboration efforts between our county's community mental health center and the county jail. We were initially funded by a Bureau of Justice Association grant about 5 years ago, but since have completed that and are now fully self-sustained program that our county offers. Our goal is to identify incarcerated individuals that are in need of services and start treatment with these folks while they are pre-trial and often incarcerated, and continue to serve them as they get through the legal system and re-enter their community. Our ultimate goal is to have a positive impact on recidivism rates in Douglas County. Oftentimes, our folks are released from incarceration while still in treatment with us. In the beginning, we feared whether or not they would return to complete treatment. And what we have found is more often than not, they do return to the jail 3 times a week to complete treatment and demonstrate a desire to stay engaged with us. We believe our clients see treatment, our team, their peers, and the program that we're housed within as a lifeline when they first re-enter their community. We work really hard to make sure that our clients are set up for success when they leave, and we work even harder to make sure they know that they have a place to return to and people that care about them. Another thing that is unique to our program, I think, is we have a case manager who provides case management services while they're incarcerated and in our services, and then also 6 months of post-release case management. Clients are not required to participate in that, but many find it helpful. Okay, next slide. Okay, social capital at the Community Mental Health Center. Social capital plays a big role in what we do at CMHC and in the IOP program. We believe that helping our clients find meaning and purpose and learning to connect with their world, their community, is a cornerstone of what we do. We begin teaching to this very early in treatment. We frequently talk about Bruce Alexander's Rat Park and reference the work of Johann Hari. If you aren't familiar with these people, they suggest that treatment of addiction should put more value in helping people make connections and find meaning and purpose. So with this in mind, if you remember back to the previous slide, we knew our clients needed, excuse me, and wanted more than just treatment. The 10-week treatment program was just the tip of the iceberg. Our coffee chats began because our clients needed a space to continue to develop the bonds they built in treatment and to nurture this new way of thinking and behaving. So with that, we developed the coffee chats. You can go to the next slide, and I'm going to pass this off to Emily.
Thanks, Lydia, and thanks for having us here today. So our coffee chats were started when we realized that the relationships that our clients were building within our treatment program were important to them, and there was a value there that was important for us to continue following through with. They build relationships where they are able to be honest with each other, as many of you know, when they're in their treatment groups, and then they leave the facility and find that some of that connection is lost. And so the trust can tend to start to be, underdeveloped, and we wanted to try and follow through with some of that. So we partnered with a local coffee shop that is literally right down the street from our facility, right down the street from the jail. And in fact, in that slide where it says Sozo, you can see the jail at the very top of the street there past the stop sign. And originally we had tried another coffee shop, and that coffee shop was not as receptive. In fact, what they told our program director at the time, our program personnel at the time, was that they did not want to have people like that coming into their facility. So we quickly discontinued going to that particular location, and we made a partnership with a coffee shop that is run by 3 local churches. It's a very comfortable setting. Generally what they do is they rent out the meeting space that we use, and it's $20 an hour. However, they have donated that space to us for the 1 hour a week that we meet with the people. So we partner with them. They support our mission. They understand how important it is for folks who are trying to re-enter the community to have support. And so they support us in all of that. The incarcerated individuals, about 5 weeks into the treatment program, which again is a 10-week course, 10-week program. About halfway through, they are given permission to attend the Sozo Coffee Chat on Wednesdays that we have, and they are able to leave the reentry program on their own and walk down to the coffee house and participate in that coffee chat with us. And that helps them to develop a sense of trust within this facility, as well as a sense of trust within themselves. The coffee chats are voluntary. They are not required to attend that. We often tell them, this is your meeting. Let's talk about where you are. What do you need to talk about? Sometimes it's very formal. Other times it's just kind of a networking and brainstorming together. We're there to celebrate successes with them. We're there to help them figure out difficult things that they're experiencing. We have people who come to the group who have graduated years ago, and people who are still incarcerated and just trying to figure out this new path for their life. The atmosphere, as I said earlier, is very comfortable and welcoming. There's coffee, there's food, and it's just a place where everybody gets together, and like any other coffee house, gets together and just chats. Next slide. The clients are welcome no matter how long they've been gone, or how new they are, or the status of their recovery. We have folks who come in and who have relapsed and who have come back because they know it's their safe place. Our hope is that they, return to their community and they continue on their path, and everybody has a wonderful, bright future and is successful moving forward. But we know that that's not the reality of addiction. And so we don't pass judgment. We are simply there to support them and to help them come up with a new way to handle whatever it is that's tripping them up. It is a safe space for them to conquer the challenges that they encounter as they're trying to get back into their world. And the real work really does come after treatment is done. It's almost like they're cocooned while they're in treatment, and even while they're in this facility. And then they return to the community, and that's when life really starts to be what life can be. So we have people that show up and they say, this is just the only place I could think to come. I'm having a really hard time. And the difference between what we do and like 12-step communities and other, programs like that is that we don't just talk about addiction. We talk about the struggles that they're having, and we laugh, and sometimes we have to get real serious, and all of that develops a sense of trust and relationship with them. And I think it's important to note also that when people are in their addiction, they're building relationships, like Philip mentioned earlier, the negative social capital relationships. And if we're going to take that away from them, well, we're not taking it away, but when that is removed from them, we have to replace it with something else. If we want them to be successful, there has to be a replacement. Otherwise, they will fall back to the old ways. And that's the last thing that we want for them. I think that is all I've got. Next slide. And I think, Lydia, it's on you.
All right. So we don't have a lot of formal ways that we hold our clients accountable in terms of the coffee chats, but we do know some of the things that we do kind of help establish a culture of accountability among the group. Most importantly, we feel like is we are blessed that our jail administrators allow folks that are incarcerated pretrial to attend our coffee chats once they've completed 5 weeks of treatment. So when those folks come down to the coffee shop, we feel like they have an opportunity to really see what's going on, make some friends, get some insight into what their future might look like in the coming months if they stick on this path. So we believe that keeps people coming back and interested in our group once they're released and, able to do what they will. Also, the culture and attitude that we develop in the treatment group, we think that transfers down to the coffee chat. So clients just kind of innately understand that, you take what you need and then you give what you've got to the next person. So they know that it's cyclical in nature, and their participation is a big part of not only the success of the group, but individual successes. Our clients do sign a participation agreement that touches on accountability. And finally, as I know we've said before, Emily has said, we really stress to our clients that this is your group. It's what you want it to be. think about what you needed when you were in this position, and give that. So our clients, they rise to the occasion, and we've seen a lot of great successes. So that's all we've got for our presentation. I think.
Yes, so at this time, we have the also added pleasure of not only, again, hearing from a practitioner's perspective, but also participants. And so 2 participants from the program have agreed to kind of share their thoughts. And so first, we will hear from Jared, who is a current participant. And then prior to opening up for the larger Q&A, we'll hear from Ashley. So Jared, we'd love to hear and understand, hear your perspective on Coffee Chat, and even in terms of Coffee Chat in the era of COVID, how you have maintained that engagement. So I'll stop talking and let you share with folks your experience in the program.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Jared Dingwell. I've been a member. I think I started going to the Coffee Chat last July. Another one by Johan Hari, by the way, that Lydia loaned me while I was last year when I was incarcerated, she loaned me. It's a book called Lost Connections. And that meant a lot to me. When in my active addiction, the thing that I was trying to do was make connections through any means necessary, whether that be through drug usage or helping somebody fix something or whatever, just trying to make connections with people. And where that comes into play is that when, like Emily alluded to, when you remove the drugs or that aspect of life, what do you fill it with? I did my treatment while I was incarcerated. They have a program called RAP and then IOP as well. Now, during that, to be blunt about it, you people, you meet people in jail, right? And they go through this program. It's very generic. Anybody can sign up for it, blah, blah, blah. You get what you want out of it. Now, you see people during the classes and things like that, during the daytime, they're all, oh, I'm so perfect. I'm so, whatever. I'm changing my life. And then you go back down to the mod and you see a completely different person. Now, then you go into the IOP program and that you try and make a better connection with people. Yes, it's called Lost Connections by Johan Hari. But anyways, you make that connection with other people. And in IOP, that kind of gives you a basis for people that are currently there. It's a revolving door of people. But then you go on and you go to this coffee house, right? And you get to meet people that have been there for a while. One of the biggest things that for me was I'm a helper. So I like to help other people. So when we go into Sozos, even after I was out of the treatment program, out of incarceration, and I'm out living in the world, every Wednesday I would show up. I think I only missed it twice due to family events, which is things that I wasn't involved in before. But I like to go in there and help other people. Somebody will come in and, oh, I've been running into this, or so-and-so has been writing me about that. And a lot of times I'm saying, okay, 9 months ago, I was in the same position. You make these connections with people based on, similar to a 12-step program where it's based on previous experience that somebody else has had. But it's more than that because it's not just recovery focused. Like you can come in there, and I'm going to throw Ashley under the bus here. They wanted her to get a license. Well, the argument is, why not get a license? What is that, just because they want you to do it doesn't mean you have to drive. But ever since that program, if there's a day that I came in there and I came in there twice, just ready to throw everything to the wind, I could actually open up. It didn't matter what it was. It was actually my house manager. That's not really recovery based, but it was something that was affecting my life that can affect my recovery. And it was nice to be able to come in there. I've made connections with people that have graduated 3 and 4 years ago. I talked to them on Facebook, you know, outside of just the coffee house. It builds that bond with other people where, like, if there's a place I need to run, like I need help someday, that's where I'm going. You know, I talk to these ladies quite a bit. As Emily said earlier, she loves me to death. That's for sure. And I'm a very difficult person to deal with sometimes. But that connection with other people is where it's at. That's what was lost. That's where my addiction took me, is that's what I wanted. It took me a long time to figure that out. But now you make that connection, you know, and the other thing that I've seen, I have not relapsed since I've been in it. But when people do come in the doors that just messed up over the weekend, it also created a very safe space to talk about that. You know, your PO or whoever can sit there and say, oh, you relapsed? Well, congratulations, you get to spend 30 days in jail, or congratulations, we're revoking your parole or whatever, probation, and we're going to send you back to jail or prison. You go in there and you talk about it and say, listen, I messed up. Things in my life went awry. Nobody in there judges you. All they try and do is help you. It's one place that I have found that there is literally zero judgment from anybody, whether it be the facilitators or other clients in the group. In 12-step programs, things like that, you do, at least from my experience, have seen judgment on individuals. But with Sozos, I've seen multiple people relapse and there was no judgment ever. And that came from that bond of trust that just happened. I can't explain why it happened or how it happens, but it happened. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I could probably say, so Sozos was very, very important to me. It's important to me to help other people and lend the experience that I've gained to others. It's also important to me that if there's a time when I need to talk to somebody, that I can go talk to somebody. And that facilitates that type of place. And like I said, I still talk to a lot of these people, even people that I didn't make a strong connection with while I was there. You just say, hey, we end up talking over Facebook or something like that. And there have been days where, you know, you randomly meet them a couple months down the road, you're at the same place or whatever. Oh, hey, how are things going? You know, and you get to talk to a whole new group of people that you never would have went up and talked to simply because you knew one person in that group. Sozos bridges multiple recovery communities together as well, due to the people, that personal connection. That's, for me, it's all about connection.
Cool. Jarrett, that's perfect, and I want to thank you again. You know, what Jarrett just really talked about was, you know, social capital is not just meeting people, it is lasting connections too. And I think Jarrett just provided a couple of really good examples of what that might look like. Next slide, please. Now we're at an opportunity to hear your thoughts and hear your questions. And so one of the things I want you to do is the following. I want you to get prepared to ask questions as I wrap up these slides. The next slide really shows if you're interested in the Coffee Chat program, here's the contact information for Lydia and Emily. Sarah will also put their contact information in the chat box. I also want to share to you is hot off the press, we've just recently finished a case study on the work that's been done in Douglas County, and that will be a part of the resources that we share with you today, and also in our follow-up email and correspondence on Monday. So again, here's their contact information, and really thinking about the unique aspect of what we've heard here, right? There's a program that allows incarcerated individuals that come across and engage with individuals who are not, and really build long and lasting connections. And so as folks think about questions, we're going to spend about 10 minutes having you ask any questions to members of the team. But I also want to start that question and answer, next slide, please, with Ashley. And so Ashley, you get the first question of the day, and then Sarah will field questions that are being placed into the chat box. We'll spend some time dialoguing, and learning and hearing, understanding more about the program. So as we listen and learn today from Lydia, Emily, and Jared about the coffee chat and how it works, actually, I'm pleased I also have the opportunity to add your perspective. And so as you reflect on your experience with coffee chats, what is it about the way that things, people come together that stood out for you? And how has the peer group approach most impacted your kind of recovery and your process?
Hello, thank you. Well, a few things that stood out for me is the difference between like the coffee chats and AA meetings, which is when you get out of jail and finish treatment, that's usually all you have in recovery. Me just getting out of jail, new in recovery, first time in recovery, going to a meeting and getting a sponsor, like all that was intimidating. But having the coffee chats there and the peer support, it really helped me with that. Also having those peers that have like they have been through the same thing I have, like not everyone in AA has. So that peers really helped. And I think the peer group, the openness, the honesty, the support, and just really their experiences and just seeing a new way of living has impacted me the most.
Cool. All right. Thank you. So at this time, I'm going to ask Sarah to field questions that have been placed in the chat box, and I highly encourage others to share. And while we won't be able to answer every question today, we will be curating your questions and really sending that information back out to you at a later time. So Sarah, if you would read off a couple of questions for our panelists, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. The first question is about how do you keep the coffee chats going during COVID? One of our participants is talking about how their programs, some of their peer group programs have really taken a hit because of COVID, and looking for, they're using Zoom some, but really looking for specific examples of how folks are dealing with using peer groups while we're also trying to social distance.
And before our panelists ask, I would also, since we have a community of folks who are doing this work, if you also have an answer to that question, please place it in the chat box. But Emily and Lydia, I'll let you guys respond.
Okay, so COVID has been tough for us as well. When this all started, our coffee shop shut down. So we didn't have a lot of warning, and we pretty quickly moved to virtual stuff using Zoom and Hangout Meets. And as things have reopened, we've been blessed to be able to go back there, and it's sometimes kind of a blended format. So there's virtual for people that aren't comfortable, and in the live group, we practice a lot of mitigation strategies. So we have a large room that we can sit 6 feet apart. We encourage mask wearing, we provide masks, bring hand sanitizer, stuff like that. So we just try to be as open and as available as possible to make it easy for people to get there however they can.
All right, thank you. Other questions, Sarah?
Yeah, so the next question was, does everyone have to be a nonviolent? I'll ask a series of these questions and let you guys answer as a group. First one, does everyone have to be a nonviolent offender to attend? How did you get the jail to agree to let people go to the coffee shop? And our chat participants, people who are also participating and are sat in the jail. Let's see, would these be different if male and females met in separately as opposed to together, do you think? And go ahead, I'll stop there.
Let's start with those four.
Okay.
Lost. So if you guys could start with those four, that would be great.
Well, I can say, I think the first question you asked was, can you repeat the first question, Sarah? I'm sorry, I had it.
No worries, I did too many. I got too excited. The first one was, does everyone have to be a nonviolent offender
Yes. So it's the participants are incarcerated in our reentry assistance program, which is also along the lines of work release. So they have to be eligible. They have to meet certain criteria. And one of those criteria is nonviolent offenses on their record, period. So in order for them to qualify to even be in this program, they have to be nonviolent. And then as a part of this program, they are able to be screened for IOP and participate in IOP, and they have access to the community after a certain amount of time in the program. Lydia, do you want to take the next one about how we got them to do it?
Yes, I want to add something too, that something kind of exciting is we have gotten a grant to offer IOP on the secure side of the jail. So where we're at is the reentry assistance program. People apply to come over, they wear street clothes, and they do eventually earn community privileges, like going to work and AA meetings and things. But it will look different when we're on the secure side and they don't have those options. So what was the second question?
How did you get the jail to agree?
I think we are really blessed at our jail. I like to say this a lot, but most of our jail administrators are licensed mental health practitioners, so they kind of get it. We have the Criminal Justice Center, which is where we operate, and that's kind of like a project of the powers that be, where they want to see community-based work. They want to see this stuff happen. So I don't really know that we had to push a lot, because they understood the value of it and they wanted to see it happen. And that was the hopes of, our program, that was, lots of work by lots of individuals to get going. When we first started, clients couldn't attend until they'd completed 7 weeks. And when we saw the success and how well it went, our jail was really happy to move it to 5 weeks, because they want to support what we do. So yeah, it was not a hard sell for us. We have people that want to see this happen.
So if we could have one more question and we stay on time, that would be
okay.
good.
So one more question. It's a two-part question. It is how, and Jared, you spoke to this some, but how is this program different from NA or AA? And then also, do you think that this program would be different if males and females met separately?
So I'll go back to something I had said before, which is this program is different for the simple fact of there's less judgment. A lot of meetings base their stuff off of it's got to be recovery focused, and some, I hate to put it this way, old timers will be like, if it's not about this, or if it's not about this, you can take that stuff outside or talk to your sponsor about it, blah, 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 blah. This works, in my opinion, in conjunction with those things. In my personal opinion, it's, if you do, the more things you add into your life, the better off you're going to be. As far as, how do I even say it? You can come into this and talk about things like, for example, I relapsed or something like that. Or, hey, like I said earlier, the licensing issue. So-and-so wants me to get a license and I just, but I don't want to do it. It's something you can go in there and talk about those things. And they're just simple little things that some people will consider outside the realm of recovery. And even though it has to deal with your personal stuff, it's easier to talk to a group versus NA. I'm an NA person. They'll have you talk to your sponsor. Go talk to your sponsor. The other part of it, the other second half of that question is dealing with males and females together. It provides a more realistic life area. You go to meetings, you go to NA meetings, you go to AA meetings. There are, you have both male and female. I think if you separated it out, it would be more incarceration style, if that makes sense. Like they talked about RAP, the reentry assistance program, it's to re-enter you into society. Now, everywhere I go in the world, from a gas station to a meeting to everything, is both male and female. Learning to deal with the opposite sex is part of re-entering society. There are people that have come through, an easy way to phrase it would be, from the male standpoint, misogynistic, and having to deal with females and actually learn ways that maybe their father didn't show them or a male figure in their life. I know me personally, my stepdad, who I consider my father, got together with my mom when I was 7. So I didn't have, besides my uncles and my grandparents, I didn't have a male role model. But it provides those things. You can see how other men interact with women. From the female aspect, I would say ask Ashley.
So I would love to ask Ashley, but I also am looking at time. And so what I want to do is to, again, thank our colleagues from Omaha for sharing in a very real and poignant way the work they're doing. One of the points I want to make also, and often as we think about reentry programs, most are either pre-release or post-release. Another unique thing about what you've heard today is that this is a hybrid in that you're engaging individuals before they're released and bringing them out. And so as they transition and begin to interact with individuals, you have a unique aspect. And so it's not going from 0 to 100 without that gradual reintegration. So again, I want to thank our colleagues from Douglas County for that presentation. And so I want to spend the last few minutes doing a deeper dive into our 3 practices. So next slide, please. We are really about to revisit how we do this in a collaborative way. So I have some questions that are going to come. So I need everyone to be ready to share your impact, because we need to understand how does this work in a real world setting. And so we talked about that first practice around developing organic connections. And so one of the things we want to share is that a part of our resources, we've done some case studies on some other programs that we think are also exemplars. And the first is called Connections to Success, which is a workforce development self-sufficiency program located in St. Louis and Kansas City metro areas. And it really has a goal of providing lifelong mentoring for its participants. And so it's 10 to 15 individuals engaged as a group in 60 hours of intensive professional development, and training over a 2-week period. Then are highly interactive activities and discussions about personal aspirations and struggles, and again, how you create bonds. And so that's another program we wanted to share with individuals that really focuses on that first one. Next slide, please. We also want to talk about some key considerations as you are thinking about these practices. So for example, as we think about, what are some of the things that you need to have in the back of your mind when you're creating those? And there are a couple of considerations we want to share. And so there are 4 main ones, and first is size. Size matters with respect to having something that's intimate so folks can have meaningful relationships. And so they need to be small enough to allow participants to really become meaningfully acquainted to the individuals. They can't be too large, and then it's really is a barrier to kind of long-term lasting relationships. The other is facilitation. People who can serve in a leadership role. How do you bring folks together to have that conversation? Understand the makeup of your group. And then an agenda, and this doesn't have to, it can be formal or informal, as a roadmap that really talks about how you create relationships. And then the last is the frequency and structure. I think Jarrett talked about he went every Wednesday, and so there has to be consistency in creating, these spaces. And so, so one of the things we really want to highlight is the importance of that. So one of the things that I'm sorry, I think I got off a little bit here. I apologize. My slides are moving too fast. Please forgive me. Let me back up here. So as it relates to organic, 3 things that are important. One is food and social time. So everyone understands that food is important. And so figuring out how you get supplies and funding for that is great. Physical space, the coffee house is the perfect opportunity for a place that is both safe and non-threatening to bring folks together, and then structured opportunities. And that's really finding successful ways to really facilitate that building. One of the things, and some folks have already asked a question, is around some of the challenges. So next slide, please. So here's what we want to hear from you, is to really, in the chat box, what do you see as the major challenges or barriers to developing organic connections, either in the work you're already doing or work you've done in the past? So I'll give you a minute to really put those in the chat box. And again, we'll be gathering all this information to send out to you. So please share what you believe some of those challenges are. I see trust as being an important factor. And as we think about social capital, trust has been really one of those important things that you really have to focus on. Are there other challenges in terms of creating organic connections you want to share? Good. So keep them coming. So I see things like transportation, also self-esteem, time. Excellent. So next slide. As folks are really thinking about, what are their challenges, the other program that I want to share with you as it relates to peer groups, because I was getting ahead of myself, clearly not slowing down here, was really thinking about a program that's called Building Wealth and Health Network. And it's really an opportunity for parents and caregivers of young children to increase their income and savings, improve their health and well-being, shape their own futures, and do it in a community setting among peers. And so this program was really modeled and tested using in a randomized trial, for example, that really found that caregivers who receive both financial empowerment education and trauma-informed peer support really improve their self-efficacy as it relates to things around decreases in depressive symptoms and also reduce economic hardship. And so again, the support that one gets from others can have impact on all types of outcomes, including self-sufficiency. So what are some of the key considerations that go along with that? Next slide, please. So those include things like, again, focus on the size of your group so that folks can really build trust, long-lasting relationships, and have support. And this even really aligns with some of the accountability pieces we'll talk about later. But also having someone who can facilitate those groups, having agendas that really provide a guidepost for how the work should be done. And again, this issue about frequency and structure. And so I do apologize, I've gotten ahead of myself. So again, as you think about peer groups and peer support networks, particularly in the era of COVID-19. Next slide, please. Again, we'd love to hear from you. What do you see some of the major challenges as it relates to setting up peer groups or using them in your specific human service agencies? And so, Sarah, if you would, as folks are sharing with that, if you could share some of those challenges as it relates to using peer groups.
Yes, you had covered some of them before. A lot of these there's some around time, there's finding good days and a location, figuring out who is authentic and their actual need for support and relationships, and perhaps just who's showing up because it's something they can do. I think to the point in some of the earlier questions about how to make this relevant and working during times of COVID and social distancing, making sure people have phones and the right plans to use Zoom and have the bandwidth and connections to participate that way. I like this one, money, money, money. Resources, we know resources count. So show me the money. And some others about dynamics around dealing with dominant personalities or people who are perhaps taking up a lot of space in a group. So a lot more around trust and creating that sense of trust and value of in a shared group environment, while also creating or cultivating vulnerability. I think that's a great point that sometimes gets sort of glossed over, if you will.
Okay, great. So next slide, please. And I want to briefly talk about our last practice, and this is accountability. And I think the folks from Douglas County mentioned there is a connection between even using peer groups and accountability. And really, it's important to think about how you support towards the achievement of a goal. So another program we wanted to highlight is called Circles of Support and Accountability. And this particular program pairs volunteers from formerly incarcerated individuals, really to help adjust others to life release from prison. So again, they serve as both mentors, support, but also holding folks accountable for their actions and really developing agreements or what they call covenants. So again, really focusing on the importance of supporting through accountability. Next slide, please. And so two quick considerations. First starts with past experiences. Understanding many of the individuals that you come encounter with have been let down in the past, and so trust might be an issue. And so understanding how past experiences might show up is important to understand. And then the flexibility that, you know, one size does not fit all. Understanding the individual and how you best support the individual in building that accountability. So next slide. So what I want folks to do now is, again, to think about challenges of emphasizing accountability. And while you're doing that, I want to really talk about what's up next in our last minutes. Next slide. So a couple of things. One, again, we talked earlier about evaluation and getting feedback. You'll find in the chat the link to the evaluation. Please share with us what went well, what didn't, how we can improve as we think about our final two webinars. Next slide. And so what is next? So again, we want to thank you for joining us today. But on Monday, we'll be sending you a certificate of completion and also a link to a series of resources that we think will be helpful to individual programs. You also will be able to get a copy of the recording of the webinar at the websites that are listed below. Next slide. Please join us in our final two webinars. And so on September 1st, we'll be talking about fostering organizational participant and mentoring relationships. And then September 16th, also incorporating relationship building practices in your organization. Again, we'll give you links to the recordings and also how to register for those. Next slide. Our colleagues at ASPE have been beyond fantastic. And so in addition to the work you've heard today, there are a series of other projects that they are actually overseeing. And so we ask you to go to this website to learn more about this project and other related work. And finally, I want to thank this incredible set of colleagues I've worked with. Next slide. So if you have questions about today's project, please reach out to us. We'll provide our leadership team's email, but also want to thank the rest of the team. Next slide. And that is the collaboration between RTI International and UNC School of Government, and also the NC Impact Initiative. And so this project would not have come together without this team. And last but not least, we're remiss if not to thank our sponsors, ASPE, which is the Assistant Secretary for Planning and Evaluation, for both sponsoring and supporting this research. So again, it has been my pleasure as your Webinar 2 host to share the three practices that we shared today. We encourage you to come back to the last two and also please complete the evaluation. Help us do this work better, and thank you for the work that you do in your community's social capital strategies. And so until 2 weeks from now, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks. Take care and have a great day.